ya mama ole na fu ita pula pula mai. Ai fu igual ole asu mata mata ya days of our lives. Eva mai ile musika eva angalo ngalo ai fu ilo wita. Fa ai lo atu ya mama oe itele mana ola va ile pisa ai afai so o fai lo amalea o inga. Ole pisa e mafua ma ile tamaloa. Ole alula vai fai ngaluenga saukua ona. So ona fai leo le pafine manala pisi wa elanga langa mai. Ai ngalo ai polo totongi wa uma foki ona fa ali suavai. Telefu lava ole pisa e mafua ma ile tamaloa. Ole alula vai fai ngaluenga saukua ona. So ona fai leo le pafine manala pisi wa elanga langa mai. Tongi wa uma foki ona faali suavai. Eva mai ile musika fa angalo ngalo ai fo ilo wita. Fa ai lo atu ya mama oi etele mana ola va ile pisa ai afai so o fai lo amalea o inga. Fa alomo mai fui oi eva e te olo la balo walu ile bingo. Ai atu ta utino atu awa etitoe alu ile kasi.
Good afternoon. First, the week ahead. I'll be in Wellington tomorrow and Wednesday for Parliament before returning to Auckland on Thursday to meet with business leaders and health and social support service providers. We'll be back in the capital on Friday and then through the weekend. New Zealand will soon move into the COVID-19 protection framework, or as it's otherwise been called, the traffic light system. This week we'll be setting out some of the key information that people, communities and businesses need to ensure that life runs as smoothly as possible once we transition. The hard truth is that Delta is here and it is not going away. And while no country to date has been able to eliminate Delta completely once it's arrived, New Zealand is better positioned than most to tackle it because of our high vaccination rates and the inbuilt safety measures in the traffic light system, like the use of vaccine passes. First up, we'll provide extra guidance to help businesses prepare. Minister Wood will release a toolkit for businesses who choose to make it a requirement for their staff to be vaccinated. Already businesses like in New Zealand and the warehouse have taken this step, so this new assessment tool will help others who wish to keep their workforce and customers safe from the virus. Legislation will be introduced and passed this week to enable this framework and assist businesses. Tomorrow, we will also launch the Verifier app for businesses that require proof of a vaccine pass for entry and to operate. While a business will not be mandated to use the Verifier, it is a very handy tool. On Thursday, Ministers Little, Sepuloni and Verrill will set out the end-to-end support someone who gets COVID and those around them will receive in the community. This will include greater levels of testing, more targeted contact tracing, how healthcare in the community will work, something that already there have been initial briefings around, and what social services are available if required. The vast majority of people who get COVID in the future will experience mild to moderate symptoms that won't require hospital-level care. So what matters is that we make sure they get the best care and support they possibly can, from testing through isolation and into recovery. Also this week, we'll be releasing detailed sector guidance so business and other organisations can see how they will operate at each level of the traffic light system. The new system is safer and simpler than the alert level framework, with business able to stay open at each level. Guidance will set out how they can operate safely to ensure that can happen. In addition to these announcements, Cabinet is aware businesses are seeking greater certainty around the date of the transition to this next stage in our response so they can prepare for reopening. As you know, we've already stated that our Cabinet meeting on November the 29th will determine which levels of the traffic light system that different parts of the country will move into, and that Auckland will move in at red. Vaccine levels will determine what level the rest of the country moves into. In order to provide further certainty though, Cabinet has decided today that the whole country will move into the new traffic light system at 11:59 p.m. on Thursday the 2nd of December, making Friday the 3rd of December the first day that the traffic light system will be operationalised. That is 11 days from now, and it's important everyone gets prepared. You'll know that we've been long signalling that after the 29th of November meeting, that it would be soon after that the country would shift. This date provides the ability for businesses in particular to now plan. The number one thing every New Zealander can do to prepare for the new system is to get vaccinated. If you're due your second shot, get it as soon as possible. Vaccine passes will operate in the traffic light system, and if you aren't fully vaccinated, you'll find you're unable to access a range of places like bars, gyms and restaurants from December the 3rd, where proof of vaccination will be required. 83% of eligible New Zealanders are fully vaccinated, but nearly 200,000 people, or 4.6% of the eligible population, are more than 3 weeks since their first shot and will start missing out on going to places where passes are required. So to that group, I do urge you to get your second dose and download your pass as soon as possible. For all those people overdue for their second shot, got it today, New Zealand would be 88% fully vaccinated. That will make our transition so much safer. Cabinet has also decided that to ensure the transition to the new system is as smooth as possible and to iron out any issues with the use of vaccine passes in advance of the whole country moving, we will undertake a trial period by allowing hairdressers and barbers in Auckland to open from this Thursday, November the 25th, so long as they require proof of vaccination from customers. This means fully vaccinated Aucklanders can get their haircut so long as they present their My Vaccine Pass. We'll be posting and sending out detailed sector guidance, but in short, hairdressers will need to operate with vaccine passes, take bookings only, so no walk-ins. That means that we can ensure we don't have large amounts of congestion. Staff must also be fully vaccinated, and they must operate broadly as they do under Alert Level 2, which they'll be familiar with staff wearing masks and putting in place 1 metre distancing between chairs. Customers can remove their masks during their cut. Again, familiar settings to all of us from Alert Level 2. We've chosen hairdressers to trial vaccine passes because out of all of the venues still closed, they pose the lowest risk by reopening. There are fewer staff employed. Generally, numbers in the space are constrained by the number of chairs and hairdressers available, and distancing between customers can be easily maintained. I know this will offer some relief for the sector and customers. Most importantly, it offers us a decent trial of the vaccine pass in advance of that date of the 3rd of December. So far, 1.2 million people have already downloaded their vaccine pass, which is great, but I encourage everyone to grab theirs and prepare now for the movement into the new framework. As I said at the start, Delta is here, and we are now in the closing stages of preparations for the move to a new system that offers both greater protections from the virus, as well as greater certainty for business to stay open regardless of the level. I know that there will be some who may have some anxiety about these changes, but I can assure you we will continue to operate in the cautious and careful way that has served us so well right since the start of the pandemic, with our number one priority the protection of lives and livelihoods. But as will be clear from today, we're fast approaching the next phase in our COVID response that delivers more freedoms and recognises the hard work Kiwis have done to get vaccinated. It's based on the values that have served us so well, and I hope gives people the space and confidence they have the summer break that they all so deserve. We're now happy to take questions.
Minister,
Yeah, Jessica.
If we were going to move into the level 3.3 system as planned, hospitality would have been included sooner in this group. Why did you just decide to go with hairdressers and not include hospitality this week as well?
2 points. What we've demonstrated is that there is certainty now for businesses so that they will be able to reopen from the 3rd of December. In the meantime, we have made a decision to allow one group to open. That is a group where by default the numbers are smaller, more confined, allows us to safely test the vaccine pass system before we all move on the 3rd of December.
Why did you only announce the date today? Why didn't you do it last week? You said it would be 24, 48 hours. Why not give people certainty that they've been calling?
So Cabinet has made the decision today that that will be the date. That's allowed us to consider the advice from officials around just the legal requirements, gazetting, signing of the orders, the notice period required. So the 3rd of December is the date we can confidently move the entire country into the new COVID protection framework. And then over to you, Barry.
There's been another COVID death, a man in his 40s. Is I'd have to come back to you on the latter, but I do want to just acknowledge the death, which is obviously very sad for this person's family. This is someone who's been in hospital for a while and unfortunately has died from COVID-19, and we'll check on that, whether this is the youngest death.
And COVID modeller Sean Hendy says Auckland is past its peak of COVID cases. What do you think?
What I would say is that the signs are very promising in Auckland, and on Wednesday when I join Minister Hipkins, I'm planning to show the updated figures of what the R value looks like, what the modelled number of cases, hospitalisations and ICU admissions look like. But what I can say is that you saw through last week that the hospital admissions and ICU bed numbers were not increasing. In fact, they dropped towards the end of the week, and they're hovering around 80 at the moment. This is a really good sign, and it's a reflection of the good work that Auckland has been doing by abiding by the alert level 3.2 rules, but also the impact of vaccination, which is quite profound. So I'll update on Wednesday about what the modelling has shown.
Minister, just quickly on another topic before I boost. Would you ever back down on Three Waters?
Oh, look, we've made our decisions for all the right reasons. We cannot continue to have thousands of New Zealanders getting sick from drinking water every year. We cannot continue to have a situation where infrastructure is holding back our ability to build the houses we need, or a continuation of the situation where sewage is routinely released into our waterways. The status quo is not an option. If we maintain the status quo, ratepayers would be facing larger bills. We don't want that. That is what Three Waters is all about.
Did you ever back down on Three Waters?
No, we didn't take these decisions lightly. They've taken years of consideration, and they are designed in such a way that we retain all the things people care about: safe drinking water, the ability for locally them to be owned and managed, but us to actually turn around all of the issues we've had with water infrastructure to date.
So
Barry.
You're allowing hairdressers
Yeah.
to test the vaccination passport
Yeah.
system. You talked a couple of weeks ago about al fresco dining. You've got 25 people, 25 groups in Auckland. Why not do it now? Why not allow them to do the test, or is the test for vaccine testing not up to scratch yet?
No, that would not be, that's not the rationale. Here we've got an entire sector who are able to undertake this test as a sector, and where we know that actually of all the groups that we're able to open up, this is amongst the lower risk, because the ones that we already have that have not yet reopened are all of hospitality, gyms, a wide range of close personal services. This is a sector where, by default, the number of people at any given time in a venue is going to be limited by default, where the number of workers are limited by default, and where we believe actually we can, at this earlier stage, safely test the vaccine certificates. One of the issues for hospitality and outdoor settings, one of the asks we had is whether or not we could change bylaws to enable a larger range of hospitality venues to be able to legally hold al fresco dining. We looked at that. There wasn't a simple legislative fix. It's quite a complex area of law. We haven't finished looking into those options, but it wasn't a straightforward option.
So you're saying essentially, that the restaurant sector can't test as effectively at the moment as the hairdressing sector?
No, that wasn't what I was saying. Forgive me. What I was saying was I hear the call separately that the sector has asked around us to explore enabling them to have more outdoor settings, because we've already said that they are safer than indoors. No, what I was setting out was the reason that we chose hairdressers is because of all of the current sectors unable to operate, this is probably the lowest risk one. Because of course then defining that only those hospitality who have outdoor settings might sound straightforward, but when you're drafting a legal order isn't necessarily.
Are you going to, can I just ask you one more? Are you
Sure,
going
Barry.
to ask Stuart Nash to apologise for calling the groundswell movement racist and anti-vax?
Well, of course, look, it's for Minister Nash to explain the context of his own comments. Of course, his point was that he was referring to some of the material that he had seen in online forums, which led him to that view. I've said I wouldn't use that language. I wouldn't describe generally an entire group of people in that way, but I'm not going to ask him to apologise for his comments. He's given his context, that's his view. I take a different one.
Why don't you ask him to apologise?
I've just set out the reason.
Sorry?
I've just set out the reason. Jane?
Do you think it's
acceptable that Kāinga Order is not evicting some tenants despite police call-outs, prosecutions, violence, no evictions over 3 years, and some pretty bad examples of their behaviour towards neighbours, but
Yeah.
they are allowed to remain there.
Yeah. And look, here we have two roles that we need to take very seriously. Of course, we need to make sure that in a neighbourhood, we're doing everything we can to ensure a neighbourhood and a community is safe, that neighbours aren't duly impacted by behaviour that people would just frankly consider antisocial. The issue we also have, though, is that we are the final provider of housing in many respects. Once you're evicting someone from state housing in that way, there are very few options left.
That, should that situation override the right in some case of elderly people?
Oh, I hear you on that. And I would caveat what I'm, and as I say, I caveat that with the fact that there is a competing need for us, of course, to make sure that communities are safe, and we have a role to play there as well. As a local MP, I've come across circumstances like this, and we do have to make sure people feel safe. We do have to make sure that people are in our state housing are respecting basic expectations in a community, and, as you say, not terrorise people around them.
Change in policy though, because there's no sort of deterrent at the moment. There have been no evictions, so people are carrying on.
But
so
you
should
will.
Kāinga Order actually be?
Yeah. That's not to say that Kāinga Order will not move people on into more suitable circumstances if there are issues that they identify. So I don't think it's fair to say that there are no interventions. There are interventions, and they should be utilised, particularly if they're causing concerns in a community and people are feeling vulnerable. I'll let you finish there, Jane.
Just Marsden Point, the refinery up there closing down. Should or could the government have intervened to save those jobs and also to protect potentially oil prices in the future for New Zealanders?
So one of the concerns that we rightly had were twofold. Just the impact on the community, and there will continue to do work locally with the regional economic development teams around ensuring that those high-skilled workers that we're doing everything we can to make sure that they are utilised and retained, and supporting that work. The second concern that we had was security of supply. The advice that we've received is that these changes pose no greater risk to security of supply than what already existed with the terminal acting as a refinery. So those were some concerns we've had. Those have been worked through, but there's obviously an extra piece now we need to do alongside to support the workforce. Yeah, Henry.
In hindsight, do you have any regrets about the way that you communicated and presented the level 3 step changes? Polling that DPMC commissioned for your COVID response showed that you went from really high level of compliance and understanding with the level 4 rules to widespread confusion about the level 3 step changes.
Well, of course, first of all, to point out what's really important is people understand them when we move into them. And I don't think there's any suggestion that when we've moved into those that it's been problematic. That's when we need people to really engage so they understand what's expected of them when they're there. Look, the call on us was twofold. If we can ease safely to do so, and it's not unusual all the way through, we've at least been flexible enough to step into new alert level shifts, and that's what we kept open. We signalled to people that if we were able to move, that is what it would look like, so that we could balance the need for people to plan and prepare, but also not to set an unrealistic expectation that it would be a straight move to 2.
On the traffic light system, a lot of community events that are coming up have cancelled. There's places where VAX passes won't really be workable because they're unfenced, things like school galas.
Yeah.
Are they covered by this specified outdoor community event exception? And can you set that out a bit clearly?
So across all of the traffic light framework, for the most part, if you're vaccinated, you can go about doing all the things you'd usually expect. So that's the most important thing to communicate about the new system. If you're vaccinated, you can go to hospitality, you can get your hair cut, you can go to a gym, you can go to large gatherings. What varies is just how large those gatherings are at different levels. And that's exactly the same as what we've had through our alert level system. Where we are making sure that we put out specific sector guidance is, as you can imagine, we do have to be quite particular in the way we're treating schools. because we've got large groups of unvaccinated children, we've got parents who need to supervise them. So that's an area where we will be putting out sector guidance this week that is quite particular to those venues. We'll do the same for local government where they have events that are outdoor and where you don't have entry and exit points to check certificates.
Yep. New Zealand doesn't publish at this point the vaccination status of its COVID deaths. Most other countries do. Is there a privacy concern there, and is there any move to maybe do that, maybe more anonymised every month or something, so you couldn't, pick one person out?
Yeah, the issue to date has been it's been attributable to individuals. So obviously there is a privacy issue. I'm not going to say that as the numbers increase, because we're wanting to keep our deaths to a minimum, but it is something we will look at. And we do publish every day the vaccination status of our hospital admissions, a proportion that are fully vaccinated, and also can provide that for hospital for those in ICU. And of course, we also publish every day the vaccination status of our overall cases for the day. But it's just the very small numbers with deaths.
Okay, sorry, I'll come to the core.
One of the things that would be monitored in the traffic light system would obviously also be tangihana.
Yeah.
How would you be able to man a tangihana, if they're not requiring vaccination certificates? How do you kind of keep a handle on that?
Yeah, and in the same way that we already do with gathering limits. You'll see there these options. If people don't want to use passes, then they don't have to, but then the size and scale is limited. But again, we already have the use of funeral directors supporting the management of gathering limits for funeral and tangihanga. And at the same time, marae, of course, have played a role as well. So it'll be no different. There is also, there will be guidance that goes out to support, as was under the alert level system, to support marae and the choices that they will make. But we expect that marae will choose how they wish to roll out these options that they will have.
Concerned that there might be a backlash, like the government's trying to control how Māori are allowed to grieve for their loved ones?
No, because this is exactly why we've created a framework where there are choices. If people choose not to use vaccine certificates, then they don't have to, but the gathering limits will be lower as a result.
Can I just ask you about Auckland?
I'll just kind of scan that around. Just Barry, if you don't mind, I'm just going to come to a few people who haven't had a chance, and then I'll double back to you. But Barry, quite a few people need to go, so I just want to be fair. Yeah, Mark?
Quick question about
Barry,
Auckland.
if you just a little more patience, and then I'll double back to those on time limits, which I think include the TVs. But Mark?
Prime Minister, do you agree with the public health experts who say that as a result of opening the border on December 15, Māori will die as a result of that decision?
Well, I've of course been asked a number of times around modelling where we actually don't have that level of specificity around the impact on different groups. We do, of course, across regions, but not to that level. And I don't know how accurately models would be able to determine that. What we do know is going to make the biggest difference is vaccination rates. We know now that the area where we're making the most significant progress at the moment is with our Māori vaccination rates. And that's, of course, where a lot of people are working very hard to ensure that's the case. We're now at 79.3% for first dose. But every day and every vaccine counts as a layer of protection as we move into the new framework. But the final point I'd make is, yes, the boundary opens on that date, but we also have requirements around the movement of those individuals. And we will also be in the COVID protection framework. In those areas where there are lower vaccination rates, we'll be using vaccine passes to protect those who are unvaccinated as well. Okay, I will come.